As is typical for all of the emerging market finance conferences, we try to put a lunch talk together on an interesting topic. And this year, the lunch talk is by Coach John. You've got his bio in the brochure, so I'm not going to read out of it or tell you what it is all about. But I have two funny things about Coach that I can tell you that's personal to me, right? Number one, we've been trying to get him to come to this conference for the last 2 years. It's only after Pradeep put his weight behind the invitation that Kos came, right? Bad Kos. This is especially bad because Kos and I share more common genetic material than me and a lot of other people in this room because we are from the same state. And therefore, I can tell you one secret about Kos. When he's walking in front of you and you want to call him, try using the name Koshi. It could actually work. Yeah. Without further ado, I asked Kos what he was going to talk about, and he said in institutions and innovations, and I think that's especially interesting for us in India because, as we alluded to in the start, when we were making comments about the Indian financial sector, I think from 1991 onwards, we had this big press and push to create institutions to have better financial systems in the country. And the funny thing is that we managed to build institutions and the markets for one kind of a segment, that's the equity markets, but we've completely failed in terms of bond market development. Although you think that the common institutions of a similar nature should work. So today, Kos is going to talk about institutions and innovations. He's going to, I think, give us some stories from India versus China. And then we'll kind of get on his case saying none of what he says makes sense in the context of India. But, I mean, that's what I hope to do. But Kos assures me that he's going to make my case weak. So without further ado, Kos John.
Thank you, Susan. I am really delighted to be here. Thanks to the organizers. I think when Susan invited me, this was for the March conference or something, and I was all tied up, but I'm delighted to be here. Okay, so recently, I think the last few years, I've been very interested in institutional development of design of institutions. And when I travel in India and China, there is always a debate whether, it's partly the democratic way of building institutions, enforcing regimen and things like that, is going to slow down innovation, whereas, in China, a command economy kind of thing, and maybe lots of capital too, but command economy is able to implement things faster, and then, of course, you'll get into a discussion whether democracy is able to find the right way when the right way is not that clear cut, whereas in China, at least to some extent of growth, where the right way is probably clear cut. This is all very loose kind of discussions. Now, where I got into start thinking about these issues, we know, of course, I think a lot of people think institutions in place have a lot to do with the effectiveness, the efficiency of innovation. People talk about legal system, so I'll have a lot to say about legal system, political system, property rights, financial institutions, organizational form of doing various things, corporate culture, religion, all of these are different institutional structures. Bankruptcy systems, taxes, regulation, the intensity with which you regulate. These are all different types of institutions, and people talk about how they influence innovation. Now, recently, last, I would say 10, 15 years, there has been interesting literature in finance and economics which has asked the following question, that is, does innovation do better under various institutional structures? For example, is market finance or bank finance better for institutions? Or does institution flourish more so in a unionized environments or non-unionized environments? How does institution do under different bankruptcy systems? There is a number of has interstate bank competition, has bank competition furthered innovation in borrowing firms, or has it hindered innovation? Actually, there are papers which seem to say the opposite. There are two papers which say opposite things. There is also apparently, I'm doing a project on innovation in the different provinces of China. There is data, systematic data on the provinces, like from the patent office. I don't know how good the data is yet, but in fact, there is a paper on, they characterize different Chinese provinces as, believe it or not, more democratic and less democratic, and they look at, I think it is the high-handedness of the political regime, and they look at what is the intensity of innovation, in those in different provinces. So that was my motivation to think about, we should we should have a sort of a broad framework to think about innovation and how it does in different institutional structures. So I'm going to give you a little sort of a framework to think about some of these issues. Hope it's useful, but maybe not. As Susan said earlier, maybe it has nothing to do with what's going on in India, or lack of did you say state capacity, lack of state capacity, and so on. Okay, all right. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to start out from scratch. So the entity which has an innovative idea, let's call him the innovator. That innovator has to be financed, has to be organized, an organizational form. I'm going to go into details. And also, of course, there is a legal system in place, or the intensity of regulation could be up to the regulator, and that's part of the organizational design. And so what I'm going to do is to have two different models. Okay, so in a private economy, first of all, the model of innovation, I'm going to go into that I'm going to show you the model, a little bit of a model, since it's in a minute. But in a private economy, the social planner is going to have some constraints. Okay, and for example, let me sort of anticipate that. For example, the financier of the innovator is private financiers. So the capital suppliers, whether it is debt holders or whether it is equity holders, they are going to be private capital claimants. Yeah. So when I say managers or insiders are going to take decisions about their innovation policy in a privately optimal manner, what I mean is that's going to be well defined. So these guys are going to take their decisions about innovation, about the intensity with which they want to innovate, which will be clear in a second. They're going to do it in a way that maximizes the value of the capital claimants. So in simple parlance, they're going to do it in a way that maximizes the total value of the firm. Okay? That's a private objective, but of course, the social planner who worries about the society at large and everybody in place. We're going to, for example, the social planner wants to worry about the labor, the suppliers, the customers, the legal claimants, the society at large, everybody would have different ideas about how much to innovate, how intensely to innovate, based on the costs and benefits computed at a society level. Okay, so that may deviate from what the privately optimal levels may be. Now, an important thing about innovation is that the innovator knows what's really going on in terms of the innovation than anybody else. Okay, so there is an informational constraint. So even if the regime or the social planner has all power to be very invasive about telling the innovator what to do, of course, that's not going to be very useful because the social planner will be saying all the wrong things. At least the social planner could get it completely wrong because of these informational constraints. Okay, so that's going to be an important part of what we do. Now, I'm also going to talk about innovation in a planned economy, where the social planner may have more in terms of supplying capital. For example, the social planner may be able to not only own the factors of innovation, but also appoint the manager, control the objective of the manager, and various things like that. So there is a more hands-on things that the social planner can do. Of course, the problem is still to put resources into the right innovation or not, that the social planner will have potentially problems with doing that. Okay. So let me just quickly go into the very simple model. We don't have a lot of time. Here is the model. The model is, so the innovator can use an existing technique. So in other words, there is a tried and tested technique to do whatever the innovator is trying to do. So here we're going to represent it as you have to put I dollars into it, and I'm going to get present value of I dollars, which means I'm going to get a normal rate of return, but that's it. On the other hand, the innovator can also decide to try the innovation technique. The problem is, so that's the innovation technique. The innovation technique, as innovation tend to be, is risky. In other words, it only succeeds with the probability p. It fails with the complement probability. Of course, if it succeeds, you get the high cash flow for the company. Otherwise, you get the low cash flow. Now, an important part of the story is that these innovations have important externalities. Okay, so there are positive externalities and negative externalities. For example, let's say I found a cure for cancer. Of course, I make the tablets, and the tablets are going to be highly profitable. But there is, in addition to the tablet, in addition to the part that can be monetized, there is benefits to society which the social planner thinks about. Okay? And that here expected, there is of course uncertainty. The expected benefits are BH, and just for standardization, I'm going to call the benefits from a failed innovation, I'm going to call it 0 for now. It's not crucial. And it also has social costs, CH and CL. So what are kind of, sorry. Okay. There are social costs CH and CL, CH when the innovation succeeds, CL when it fails. For example, what do I mean by social cause? Well, asbestos. Asbestos. Oh, I should, yeah. Asbestos. So it's that I'm sure at some time it was a successful innovation, but it imposes all these social costs on the people who use it. Or think of a nuclear accident, or or even financial innovations. So they might have costs on the part of the society. Okay, now I'm going to talk about. So these are the kind of institutions I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to talk about a legal system. I'm going to talk about the organizational form. It turns out that's an institutional structure. And I'm going to talk about tax rules. So these are the institutions I'm going to talk about. So this is what is going to happen. Depending on the organizational form that is being chosen by the innovator, okay, so the social planner gives a menu of organizational forms for the innovator to use, and the innovator picks from them optimally, in a privately optimal manner. And then, depending on the organizational form that the that the innovator has chosen, the innovator is also then going to implement an innovation policy in a privately optimal manner. Let me remind you what exactly is an innovation policy. So I didn't clarify it. You see, the probability of success, the cutoff probability of success at which I start implementing the innovation, that's the innovation policy. Okay, so in other words, let's say the innovator says when the probability of success is 0.6, I start implementing the innovation. That is, instead of doing the existing technique, I'm going to use the innovation technique. Okay? Now, this is about this cutoff probability. Of course, the innovator will have his own idea, and the social planner would have maybe possibly different ideas. Okay, so that's the innovation policy. All right. Let me tell you what we have as the legal system. So the legal system tells you how good the legal system is, so that the people in society at large, they can potentially they can sue the innovator and hold the innovator accountable, let's say for 80% of the social costs. So lambda is 80%, and it's a metric of how good the legal system is. Okay? When it is 70%, it's a slightly inferior legal system. So that's what lambda is. Lambda is the quality of the legal system. That is the degree to which the people in the society, customers, people at large, they can hold the firm or the innovator company responsible for the social cost. Okay, so we went through this. Now let me just define quickly social optimality. Social optimality, what the social planner does is, of course, the social planner worries about everything that I told you. Social planner worries about the benefits, the costs, the cash flows, all of it. So the social planner aggregates everything and then asks the question, what is the probability of success I need to make the total expected outcome on the society to be non-negative? Okay? So in other words, PS is the success probability I need to make the whole innovation, okay, we have to go fast, whole innovation successful. So for example, 0.55. Let's say the number is 55%, 0.55. So the social planner what has done is I need a 0.55 success probability to make an innovation viable, right? That's what the social planner wants. But for reasons, I'm going to rush through this. For reasons, I'm going to motivate. Oh, let me just, I can, okay. Let's think about a couple of organizational forms just to get our intuition going. So let's say there is an unlimited liability company. Unlimited liability company. Unlimited liability company, again remember the private optimality, the managers are innovating to maximize the value of the firm. So what the social planner, remember, took everything into account, whereas the private firm is not going to worry about the non-monetized benefits to society. Yeah? Everything else he has to worry about because they do, remember, the legal system lambda holds the firm accountable for the social cost, so they do have to pay that cost to from the profits of the enterprise. Okay. So now you can see immediately the unlimited liability firm is going to have a cutoff which is a higher number because the denominator is going to be smaller. That means this company now is going to hold out for a 70% probability of success before it implements the innovation. Okay? So on the other hand, an unlimited liability company, a limited liability company, see, limited liability company gets to walk away from the social cause in the bad state of the world. They just don't have enough cash, right? So that's limited liability. So now you can see immediately the limited liability company would be more aggressive. And under some conditions, they're going to be much more aggressive than what the social planner wants. Okay, so what we're going to do is to have a structure of taxation. So what is going on is this: some innovations are highly profitable. So given limited liability, see, the company is saying, you know, we're going to go for it because if things fail, we get to walk away from the societal costs anyway. So what the corporate taxation is going to do is to restrain the company just so that they don't innovate too much. They don't take too much risk. Yeah, they're going to be aggressive. So that's the thing. So now we have. So now remember, I'm just going to put it together now. So the social planner is going to give the company a choice between limited liability organizational form and unlimited liability organizational form. That's going to be a privately optimal choice by the innovator. And then the innovator decides on the innovation policy. So they'll come up with a number, possibly 0.55, which the social planner wants, but usually not, for reasons I just told you. Okay, so that's the story. So let me now, that's a design. So now the design problem here is simple. So the social planner is going to set in place an umbrella of institutions. Okay, that is the menu of organizational form choice, the corporate taxation, which is double taxation. So put in that structure, and the legal system, or in so lambda, remember, lambda could also be thought of as intensity of regulation. So the social planner puts in place these things, steps back because it's a private economy. Then the innovator decides on the organizational form. The innovator, I'm assuming, is complies with the taxation, and the innovator innovates. That is, innovator chooses an innovation policy which is all privately optimally done. So here, so let me just show you one of the things we do is we look at the optimal taxation as a function of the quality of the legal system. So we have some, we actually take this to data. We haven't, So we do find that in better legal systems, it is a declining function of the quality of the legal system. But that's less important. So let me go on. I'm almost, well. Now, when you go to a, so this is the setup in a private economy. So in a private economy, you can see the constraint. The social planner has to induce the right level of innovation. The social planner cannot invasively regulate it because the social planner doesn't have the information. Now, in the other command economy, the social planner has a lot of tools, and the tools are, for example, the financing can be done by the Ministry of Finance, or it can be done by state-owned enterprises, state-owned banks. So you don't have one constraint, that is, the innovator doesn't have to raise its own financing. You see, this is something the social planner also worries about, because otherwise the company doesn't form. Okay, and then whereas in the command economy, for example, let me give you an example. Let's say the BH, remember, non-monetized social benefits could be partly, it could be employment, stability of employment, let's say. That's a part of the benefits you get from an innovation. So the social planner can make it directly a part of the managerial insider's objective function. You see, whereas we had to sort of induce it indirectly in the optimal design of institutions in the private case. So now, so there is a lot more flexibility in the command economy, but the problem, though, is still a crucial attribute is not available to the social planner, and that is the quality of the innovation. So remember, this P, the probability of success of the new technology, that is something only the innovator knows. So there is no, it's any invasive attempt at mandating things is just as likely to be wrong. So this is kind of, in a way, the trade-off. But there is still, the social planner has more levers to pull in this setting. You know, let me just see, I think. Okay, so but I have an alternative model as well. So in one model, I'm using the legal system is a given. I'm born with a legal system. There is another one where the intensity of regulation about whatever the social planner is worried about, you know, about pollution or jobs or whatever the social planner cares about, that can be incorporated in the intensity of regulation. So that gives me, again, that gives the private economy one more institutional lever to pull. That's what I want to say. I think I want to leave it to questions and comments and everything.
Thank you, Kos. So I'm going to allow 2 questions. Okay. Yesha?
Great. Thank you so much, Kos, for that talk. I just wanted to sort of think about how it is that we can ever understand the fuller import of innovation, whether it be from a command and control economy or a private innovation. I mean, if we look at the examples that we've seen today, and we look at innovations like Facebook or Facebook, how could we have predicted that they might bring about end times for democracy, for example? Or, we think about just looking at a simple CDS and then envision, for example, how it could possibly have precipitated the meltdown of the global financial system. So in terms of our ability to anticipate these tail risks that innovation can create, externalities that are so incredibly diverse as well as particular to their industry, how do we do that? I mean, how is it even possible?
Very good question. So the way to think about it is, First of all, this, all these parameters, they're reduced form characterization of things, right? So BH, CH, and CL, you only have to know, for the purpose of this, you only have to know them as a random distribution. So in other words, you're saying, you're looking at something, this, again, with this, you're thinking in probability terms, so this might turn out to be the invention of the century with some probability. In other words, you have different scenarios for what it could be. You aggregate them, into an expected cost or expected social benefit, So that's all you need. So I'm saying this is, of course, a model to think about things. So the fact that there is significant uncertainty, you're right though, I'm not minimizing the uncertainty, especially on something like these innovations. There is significant uncertainty. However, as far as the incentives of the innovator goes, and the social planner, you just have to have expected values. So you can have a lot of uncertainty, So that's the way I think of it.
This work? Your social planner is benevolent.
Yes. Oh, that's true. In the U.S., whenever I say social planner, they assume the worst. But we are not in the U.S., so I think these guys know.
I don't know.
I have a benevolent social.
Is that better or worse?
Yeah. You're right, though. Let me clarify. So this is not the 5-year plans. This is not the, well, it could be actually. You're right.
Benevolency, though. There is a plan, but it's
You're
not
right.
benevolent.
The social planner is somebody who aggregates the welfare implications for everybody, not just the innovator, customers, everybody. So that's right. And people who are subject to the costs and benefits of these innovations, wherever they are, kind of thing. So that's the way, because.
The quick question. So maybe it's related to Larry's question. So I didn't quite get the sense of what finally you conclude between the two types of economies. But one thing that I just heard recently, I don't know how true it is, but maybe Fang can confirm. But in China, like, for example, you think about Alibaba, right? So Jack Ma created this huge company. And what I heard is that he's been asked to step down. And there is a lot of, the government has a lot of control, right? So in such an environment, what's the incentive to innovate for an individual like Jack Ma?
That's a good. So that is something the social planner in a command economy has to worry about. You see? So this is what I was saying. I was saying tangentially that. So maybe one of the, if I think about it, just to, one of the things though, in the private economy, any institutional structure I impose, right, I also have to worry about, you didn't see the calculations here, but I also have to worry about, under this umbrella of organizational forms, two things have to happen. One, the innovator should be able to finance his enterprise, okay, from private sources. Two, the innovator implements the privately optimal. There are 3 steps, right? The choice of the organizational form, the choice of the innovation policy, all of that privately optimal manner, and yet come to a solution which the social planner would have wanted to be implemented anyway. You see what I'm saying? So that is on the. Now you're asking, in the mandate economy, capital can be supplied by the state or state-owned, So that relaxes some constraint on that side. On the other hand, my main point is you still have the issue where to channel the state resources. What are the better innovations to finance? That is still something known by the innovator.
But the state is also can take
State
away.
can do.
They are willing to finance, but they can also take away anything they want, right? So that's the flip side of it.
So my sense is that there are innovations where that variation in the success probability is not high, those the state can just finance them. So that is going on. But I'm saying if it's a very risky technology where lot of innovations will lead to nothing, the state would put in a lot of money into it and finance them, and they can come to nothing. See what I'm saying? Because of the crucial role of the information. So so my own take on so even China, I think Susan was telling me, or even China is asking how much and what we should do about promoting the private firms. In other words, they're not so sure that what they're doing is the end all of what they're doing. You know what I mean? So in other words, you're right. They have to worry about that. Yeah. So that would be my take on it.
My comments were in the context of the bankruptcy law, and I see it as a law where it goes out explicitly to create a market system in some of these institutions, just because the law visualized that we need competition for the system to work well. I mean, so it was an inherent lack of faith in state capacity.
Where the assets are being sold, you mean?
All of it. So who is going to be the professional? Who is going to be the repository of the information? I mean, there were automatic arguments about how centralized repository of information would be the good thing, but we said that requires state capacity, right, to implement. And we did not have faith from the evidence of the last 50 years in India that could be done if it was a centralized repository implemented by the state. And I think that's the whole question. At the end of the day, the command economy or the central planner, at the end of the day, is people, right?
Yes.
At the implementation level. And it's the incentives of the people to make it work that we should worry about. So I'm not clear on how all of this fits.
So that is a very good point. I have to say on that, I see a lot of worry about it in India, and believe it or not, a lot of worry about it in China. That is, this is like you still want these institutions to behave effectively.
Yes.
So you're right. So if you are implementing a bankruptcy system, by the way, China is worrying plenty about a bankruptcy system. You want trained personnel.
Yeah.
So China now has what the US has, that is separate bankruptcy courts as opposed to being administered in the other law courts, and separate bankruptcy person. They're also building trained personnel, finance personnel, who can adjudicate a bankruptcy, which is, so building the right efficient or effective institutions, that you need to do anyway, no matter what these, if you're going to rely on any of these institutions, you need to make sure that they're doing something.
Fair enough. So I think that we've already segued into the next panel discussion. So before we explicitly go there, can we give a round of applause to Coase?
Thank you. Thank you.
And
any more comments? I would welcome them because...
Well, you're going to sit on the panel. They can ask you anyway.
Oh, all right.